So obviously, as I'm sure many, if not all of you, are aware, as you should be, of the current ongoing conflict in Gaza and the West Bank as it relates to Israel, and of course, the one enabling them to enact on such behavior, that being the United States. There have been many courageous people that have stood up and came out and have been protesting, calling for ceasefires and an end to this conflict, or at the very least a temporary one, so that we can at least have a conversation and then come to a conclusion on what an everlasting sort of solution would be. And these protesters and people that have stood up, they came out and approached Nancy Pelosi at her home, as they apparently do consistently. But I want to play this video for you of her getting approached at her home. I think I'll throw that in there as well. But what I really want you to look is she went on CNN and she gave this deranged array of words. That's the best way I can put it. Talking about how a ceasefire in Gaza is what Putin wants, and these people are from Russia and they're from China and they're bad, and basically this Zionism that you've been seeing online so frequently. Just take a look at how repulsive this is, and then I want to quickly talk about it.
Most of your constituents want stop the genocide, stop the Holocaust.
The Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire.
They're in front of my house all the time. So I have a feeling for what feelings they have. But we have to think about what we're doing. And what we have to do is try to stop the suffering in Gaza. This is women and children, people who don't have a place to go. So let's address that. But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see. Same thing with Ukraine. It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protesters are spontaneous and organic and sincere. Some, I think, are connected to Russia. And I say that having looked at this for a long time now. As you know,
think some of these protests are Russian plants?
These are plants. I think some financing should be investigated. And I want to ask the FBI to investigate that.
Okay, so that was nothing short of incredible in quite literally the worst way. There's quite a bit to unpack here. Firstly, let me just state that Nancy Pelosi is quite literally a fossil. And look, I'm not one to tear down the old. I have family members that are old. People that I love a lot are indeed old. Some of them, are no longer here with us, but that's neither here nor there. But she's a fossil. She's 83 years old. So when it comes to people like this, people like Joe Biden, of their ilk, things that they say, you gotta wonder if it's them saying it or if it's just the brain rot, because how much of them is still there from, their younger years. But anyway, like I said, not to tear too much into her being old, but it is what it is. This is the reality. But she says there, and I bring that up because some of these statements are just so ridiculously contradictory. How does it make sense to anyone but her? How does it make sense to her? She says that there needs to be, so she's there enough in her mind to acknowledge that there needs to be a stop to, as she says, the suffering in Gaza. She's acknowledged the fact that there's women and children that are suffering there in Gaza. Need I remind you, there is an ongoing genocide going on where women and children are being killed on a scale the likes of which I don't think we've ever seen. And she's willing to acknowledge the fact. Now, she'll never say that it's a genocide, but she will acknowledge the fact that people are there and people are suffering. But she says that calling for a ceasefire isn't a good thing. So we need to stop the suffering, but do it not by means of a ceasefire. So I guess my question would be, and she couldn't answer this question because she doesn't have an answer for the question. As you can see, she didn't provide an answer in that clip that I just showed you. Very well had the opportunity to do so. If a ceasefire, meaning a stop to the fighting, isn't a way to stop the suffering of the women and of the children that you yourself acknowledge are suffering, what 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 other way is there? Because the fighting's just gonna persist. See, these people, they lack brains, but they also lack any morals, and a heart. These are soulless creatures. Politicians are 100% completely soulless. I used to think when I was a little bit younger that, oh, they're just making mistakes. No, they're not. These are conscious decisions that they're making, and they just lack, I mean, human empathy. They just don't have it. When you see how much money they take from these different corporations and billionaires to enact their policies to serve the few while the majority of us suffer, you really get the idea of how warped and evil and sinister these people genuinely are. They're just a cog in the system, and they perform as such. And I love how she says that, um, a ceasefire is what Putin wants. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. If a ceasefire is what he wants, then that's exactly what I want. And if a ceasefire is what he wants, well, then that man may as well be a hero, because a ceasefire is definitely what needs to happen. They associate, and notice the game here, notice the play, notice how sly it is. Associate things you don't want, i.e., a ceasefire, with people you don't like, i.e., Vladimir Putin, who's also someone that you, with the help of the media and your politician buddies, have made out to be a bad guy, which I'd say a sizable margin of the American people believe is actually a bad guy. Need I remind you, Putin is no bad guy. He hasn't harmed you in any particular way. He hasn't taken food from your home or done anything ridiculous like that. But they paint him as this evildoer, this Hitlerianish character. And so they associate terms like ceasefire and stopping women and children from dying with him, in the hopes that you would then go against it. That's pretty much the game there. Okay. And they insinuate these things to try to, persuade you that, asking for a ceasefire is a bad thing. And they associate the people that are calling for ceasefires, the old Cold War tactics. Oh, they're a Kremlin agent, or, they're, with the Chinese. They're these communists that have come overseas. Just check their funding. How about we check your funding? She said, do an investigation into the financing. How about we do an investigation into your financing? Who's financing you? I mean, we already know who's bought and owned her. The same people that's bought and owned the Democratic Party. Big Pharma, the military-industrial complex. The same people that want to see these wars persist and continue. The same people that want to see the conflict that's going on in Ukraine to go on forever and ever and ever. The same people that want to ship weapons there and keep giving them money for these things. The same people that want to go to war with China, that want to bomb extremely poor people in Yemen, and the same people that destroyed Libya, that want to bomb Syria still, the same people that destroyed Iraq. Those are the people that fund Nancy Pelosi and her party and the people that surround her. So let's check into your funding and your financing, since we need to look into the people that are calling for peace, because apparently they're Kremlin agents or agents of China or Mao or Xi Jinping or whoever. They love to throw out these scare words to scare you, and it works. To their credit, it works. The propaganda machine here in the United States is so powerful. All you got to do is say a couple scary words about, socialism or whatever, this and that, and then the people get all up in their feelings, and all of a sudden they oppose ceasefires now. If the recipe didn't work, they wouldn't do it, but it does, so they do. This is pretty much how it goes. Russian plants, Putin's message. I mean, the fact that this shit lands with a certain crowd of people is very alarming. But to the people's credit, more and more as days go by, and it's hard to divert, your eyes away from a genocide. As days go by, people are becoming less and less susceptible to this bullshit, to this nonsense that she's been putting out and people like her has been putting out. You know, that video that I showed you, I grabbed from a tweet. That tweet has been quoted to hell and back. Now, if you know anything about quotes on Twitter, you know it's not really a good thing when a tweet has more quotes than likes. And I'm looking at it right now, and it does. So that's a good thing. That shows that people are becoming less susceptible to this propaganda nonsense that calling for ceasefires is bad. But this is just yet another display of Nancy Pelosi doing what she does best, which is spread absolute garbage.